Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's Greg Hagamba, so it's sports stuff, obviously. We're gonna run a mock draft. I kind of want to see uh, how I can do and how accurate I get with educated guesses because I have been looking at the mock drafts. Take into consideration injuries and you know combine, but I'm going mainly off performance, like I said, injuries because combine, that's athleticism and all that, and it matters. But I feel like I'd still pick somebody if they, had a good college career and maybe a bad combine. Maybe they weren't performing well that day. I know that's pro days are for, but a lot of players also do a lot of that. The combine stuff, so it's like the 40, the shuttles, the verticals. Sometimes players don't do that. So I really can't pick a player based off his combine uh, results, but more off his, injuries, how mature he is, uh, his college career. There are other mock drafts I have looked at. I don't know if that's really cheating or not, but you know, we gotta get some education on what we're doing here. But let's go ahead and get into that because I want to see how I do. This is only first round, by the way, so let's go and try. Now I am cheap, so I'm not buying anything up here to see the PFF grades. Like I said, I'm well educated on some of these players, most of these players, especially like I said, that are going first round that I believe, anyways. So, though it would be cool to show you, they make you pay for it, and I'm not doing that. No disrespect to PFF, it's a great site. Um, but that's just what I'm doing. So at the first pick, I would be surprised if the Titans didn't go Cam Ward, so that's who I'm gonna pick here. It just seems like the obvious choice for them. Um, them needing a quarterback and him being, in my opinion, the best quarterback. There's been a lot of rumors that that's who they're going to take. I know they brought out a whole bunch of people from their managers to their staff to go watch him at his pro day. I know a lot of teams did actually, but only one team can grab him. And I think that's going to be the Tennessee Titans. I feel like that's a lock. Uh, with this, the Browns pick, I'd say it is more difficult. I don't necessarily think we're going to see back-to-back quarterbacks get taken here. So I think it's going to be one of these two guys. Because Kirk Cousins was in Cleveland, and unless Cleveland has the best Chipotle in all the world, I believe he was there visiting the Browns. Aaron Rodgers is still an option, though I haven't heard many rumors about that. Anything could happen. So I do believe that they will end up going somewhere else. And for me, I feel like that pick is going to be Abdul Carter. It just makes sense, having him and Miles Garrett. That would just be unfair. Roger Goodell is going to have to come in and veto that if possible. But that's just my opinion. Um, the Giants, I'd say, this is going to be a tougher pick for me because they could go get Shador Sanders. It would make a lot of sense. I could also see him possibly trading for him later, if that makes sense. Travis Hunter, I'm going to go with on this pick because if you do get him here, I don't think he's going to be here later. I do believe Shador will be here later with what teams need. I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback, but he might slide now that Cam Ward has been picked. Not all these team needs QBs. So I'm going to go with Travis Hunter here because it just makes more sense. It'll fill two of their position needs. Well, actually, they don't really need a receiver, but he can play receiver. Give Malik, hopefully some open shots. Do I think they'll get a quarterback later, whether it be Shador or not? Yes, but that's what we're talking about today. With the Patriots on the clock, I think they go one or two places. I think they're going to go O-line, or I think they're going to go wide receiver. With them getting Stephon Diggs, I don't think it's going to be as sure, that it's going to be a wide receiver. And, you want to protect that guy, your franchise guy. So I do believe that they're going to go with either Membu or Will Campbell. I'm personally going with Will Campbell because I feel like he's the more popular pick. And, even though it's, not popular is always good and not as good is always popular. I think that it just makes more sense for the Patriots. Dude is huge and he's hard to move past, especially as the defensive edge since he plays on the outside. So I'm gonna go with Will Campbell to the Patriots. Now with the Jaguars, it makes sense with the pick I'm about to take. You can call me crazy for this one, but they directly said that they're trying to work on that interior. So that only leaves me to believe that they're going for one guy if he's still there, and that's Mason Graham. If they don't go for Mason Graham, I'd be pretty surprised. That guy is definitely a force to be reckoned with because he is large, but he can move, and he's definitely one of the best prospects in this draft. So, like I said, if they don't go with him, I'd be surprised. Now here's interesting one. I could go Genti to the Raiders, and it would make a lot of sense. I could also go Jade to the Raiders because it would make a lot of sense. With the Raiders losing Devontae Adams, I know it's already been a season, but I could also go Tet to the Raiders. Any of these picks would make sense. All three of these Scream Raiders, especially with Geno Smith. You know, McMillan, he's like DK Metcalf. He's big, but he can also move. So Geno Smith is used to having a guy like that. And me personally, that just makes the most sense to me, and that's where I think they're gonna go. Is they're gonna go get McMillan. With the Jets, it's also I wouldn't say receiver. That doesn't make much sense to me. They got Devontae. Granted, he's getting older, but they also have Garrett Wilson. Next year's receivers, or the year after that, because you got to think Jeremiah Smith is coming soon, and depending on how they play their cards, if they're not a good team down the road, they could go get Jeremiah Smith instead. So I don't see them actually taking a wide receiver. Sorry. I actually see them going to get Membu from Missouri. This makes a lot of sense. You got Justin Fields. You just got a quarterback. So taking a tackle, as it does say they need, would make, to me, more sense. I'm a big Carolina guy. Bryce Young being my profile picture on my YouTube channel. There's a lot of ways they could go with this pick. Obviously, you got the famous one, Jalen Walker. You got Michael Williams right here. Shamar Stewart. You could go to the offensive side of the ball, which hasn't been stated, but I do believe that they might attempt Matthew Golden or Luther Burden. I wouldn't mind seeing Mike Green, a Panther. You could also go Jihad Campbell. So you could go a million directions or in a million different directions with this pick, but I am just because, it seems like the obvious pick. He just seems like a Carolina guy. He can play both inside and outside linebacker. Jalen Walker seems to be the type of guy that Dan Morgan wants, especially after them taking Trevin Wallace last year. This just makes more sense to me as a Carolina pick. With the Saints is a bit different. I would not be surprised at all if they took Ashton Jeanty because that is a guy that Alvin Kamara can shape into a really good back. Like, there's no other guy that I'd rather learn from because Kamara's definitely a receiving back, but he can also run. He's really agile, and his balance is out of this world. And what is Ashton Jeanty known for? His balance. So I would definitely say that Jeanty would be a great pick for the Saints. But they could go Jihad Campbell. They could go Mike Green. They could go Malachi Starks, which actually would be probably an unpopular opinion. But on the other side, they could go Tyler Warren. Try to get Derek Carr, a tight end. Since, again, apparently that's who they're rolling out with. Or what they could do is they could go draft Shador and have Derek Carr shape him, or have him start, which I just don't see really happening. So I am going to go with Jeanty as the pick here, because I know the Bears probably are going to want Jeanty, which makes a lot of sense given that's the piece that they're missing from that offense right now is the running game. But for the Bears, it makes it really hard for me, now that Jeanty's gone, to decide what I'm gonna do with the Bears. There's a ton of pieces, like it says they need a D-line safety. They could get Malachi Starks. They could get Jade Brown. I'm sure their corners are fine, but a good corner is a good corner, and you can always take a good corner. Their running back. With these running backs on the board, Omarion Hampton, possible. I'd see that being more a Dallas pick than Chicago, though. I could be wrong. But me personally, I believe that if they're going for a D lineman, depending on whether it's outside or inside, they could get Mike Green. They could go get. I'm not really a big Campbell guy for the Bears. I would have been bigger on him going to Carolina or like probably the Browns. I feel like Campbell's too high to go at two, way too high. So if they were lower, I'd say they take him, but no. But for the Bears, I'm gonna go ahead and go with Amarian Hampton. Like I said, I know it feels like a Dallas pick, but they just need a running back, and they're not going to get the same thing out of what they would with him, out of Cam Scatabo or Quinn Judkins, out of Ohio State. I know those are both really good running backs. I just don't think that they're Hampton. For the 49ers, I feel like it's, they could go any way with this pick. To me, they could go get Kelvin Banks. They could go get James Pierce, or they could go get Jahdae Brown because that is one of their needs. So I mean, you can go anywhere with this pick and really not be wrong. Honestly, as a 49ers fan, I personally would want Jahdae Brown help with that secondary a little bit, or somebody on the line because let's see, tackle Josh Tillman, Kelvin Banks, Gray Zabel. Interior line, you got Tyler Booker, which I think probably be going later. So it's going to be an outside guy if they take a lineman. So I am actually going to go with the pick and go Kelvin Banks because I feel like he shows small flashes of Mount Williams. And the pick to me, like I said, it just makes sense. Now with Dallas, they could be a sneaky team for Luther Burden. I think they could be a sneaky team for James Pierce. They just got rid of DeMarcus Lawrence, so this would make a lot of sense. Again, like I said, with the guard, he's the second, third round pick, and I could see him going and get him later. As of a first round pick, it's just too risky. So I wouldn't go with him necessarily. But as an edge, I could even see him putting Jihad Campbell on the edge. Really, if it kind of makes sense depending, or Mike Green. Mike Green makes a lot of sense here as a pick, but I am actually going to go with James Pierce. I know there was some injury concern with that guy, but to me, personally, it makes sense. Miami, there's a couple guys I know I haven't quite mentioned yet. You got Malachi Starks, because they lost Javon Holland, Xavier Watts, but I think Emin Worry out of South Carolina, and I'm pretty sure I said that right. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think, with his size and speed, I want to see if it shows it. First look, he's 6'3", 230, and I think he ran like a 4.3. I don't know if it shows it. No, all this is locked. Most drafted by, see, it shows you your percentages, and that makes sense, actually. But it doesn't show his 40 time or whatever. I think it would make sense for them to take him or Malachi Starks. Again, he shows good size. He's 6'1", 205, a little bit smaller than Nicholas, our boy. But I actually think instead of going with that, I think, because let's see, the O tackles left. We got Josh Simmons. I feel like it's a little bit of a reach, if you ask me personally. So with that being said, I'm going to go get Starks for the Dolphins. And I feel like this, again, is a reach, but it wouldn't surprise me if it happened type of pick. Colts, Anthony Richardson is on his last year. If he even gets another chance, this will be his last year. To me, it makes sense, and I think it'd be stupid if they didn't draft Tyler Warren. He needs somebody, a Travis Kelce type guy. Dallas Goedert, all of the successful QBs in the NFL have a good tight end. Actually, I should say most. Don't quote me on that. Most. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Josh Allen, Dalton Kincaid, Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, Brock Purdy, which really isn't one of the best anymore, but still, George Kittle. So, I mean, it just makes sense to me to have a big buddy sitting there. Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski. It all makes sense. Phillip Rivers, Antonio Gates. So, to me, it makes sense. And even if you want to go bigger, because, Cam Newton had Greg Olsen. So, this to me is a pick that makes sense for them, and if they don't go get it, I feel like they'd be wasting it. Because Tyler Warren is probably the best tight end in the draft. I don't even know if it's close. With the Falcons, I wouldn't say receivers is the biggest need for them, even though that I do think they should get rid of Kyle Pitts, so they will need another pair of hands. So I won't take that off the board for them. Uh, to me, the pick that makes more sense really would be like Donovan right here or Michael Williams, Michael Williams, Shamar Stewart, and I'm gonna go with Shamar Stewart because though he only had 2 sacks, this dude is a beast. I mean, his physical aspects are, his physical performance was crazy. I know I said combine doesn't matter, but we've seen guys like Danielle Hunter didn't really pan out in college, but still went to the NFL and has been a beast. This guy, he's been compared to guys like Myles Garrett. Garrett, we know he's tearing up the league. So I'm gonna go with Shamar Stewart to the Falcons. This makes sense to me. Now with the Cardinals, I could go Jahdae Barron. I could go with what's the safety I just said? Nick Emanwari. It all depends on which route they want to go. Because if they go D-line, there's still a couple guys left. You got Mike Green. Why wouldn't you go Mike Green? This dude is tearing it up. I think he had 17 sacks, if I remember correctly. You got Michael Williams, Donovan. You even have other Nick. Landon Jackson. Princely, I think he's going to go, personally, I think he's going to go a little bit further. Braden Swinson, Jack Sawyer. All these guys, regardless of their rank, I feel like are going to be pretty good in the NFL. So the list is long for them if that's the route they want to go. But I personally think, it makes sense to go get Jahdae Brown, and I don't think he's going to fall any longer than that. This could go 2 ways, and I believe 2 ways only. I know it's going to be a defensive pick, and it's going to be Mike Green, or they're going to get more corner help. Will Johnson, Trey Amos, or Maxwell Harrison. I think Revel could be the guy, but I just don't see it. He's 4th on the list for a reason. I think they go get Will Johnson if he falls this far. Now, there's plenty of, injury concern on this guy, but I do believe that he will get it straight, and I think with his new defensive corner, Al Golden, I think he should do pretty good. I'm going to say that they go get Will Johnson if he falls this far. All right, with the Seahawks, this is also, after losing DK Metcalf, a sneaky pick could be Luther Burden. This would make a lot of sense. He doesn't really fit that DK type of receiver. He's more like a JSN because, he's smaller but fast. I think JSN's a little bit bigger, but he still fits that kind of receiver. They could go get Matthew Golden. That would make a lot of sense to me. But it says they need an edge, and the only guy that to me makes sense is Mike Green. Mike Green has been tearing it up. 17 sacks in 2024. That, to me, it's just, like I said, off of your college performance. And I get, he played for Marshall, but he tore it up in the combine too. I'm not going off that one thing he did against Ohio State in that Senior Bowl, but he had himself a good Senior Bowl. So I guess, to me, the only pick that makes sense is, you're building a young defensive line anyways. You got the guy from Texas last year. So I guess Mike Green would be my best pick for there. Tampa Bay, again, they could go anywhere with this pick. They could go get Jihad Campbell, which is probably the pick I'm going to end up going with, but they also got Donovan from Boston College. They've got DBs beyond, and actually, I take it back. If you're going to get a DB, I feel like, no. We're going to go with Jihad Campbell, but Emanwari is not going to slide much farther. I promise you. He will be a first-round pick. Now, with this being said, this is huge for Denver. I feel like Denver is going to go get a wide receiver because Bo Nix does not have anybody to throw to. This is horrible. I mean, you need to get a quarterback his pieces, and I feel like this is the way to do it. You're going to go get Matthew Golden. Dude is very quick. He had 16 games played, 58 receptions for 987 yards. He averaged 17 yards reception and had 9 touchdowns. Okay? This is the guy you want to go after, especially for a guy like Bo Nix. You're going to pair him with Troy Franklin. and you're gonna have Sutton. Those two dudes, huge. That is a receiver core and a half. So for me, this feels like the obvious pick. Now, Pittsburgh. Whether you go get Shador or whether you go get Aaron Rodgers or not, I don't think the pick changes here if he falls this far. I do believe Shador Sanders will be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I can't see, like I said, it's not that I think Shador is this bad that he had to go in the lower first round, but none of these teams have needed a QB. We have, let's see, we have one team, two teams, three teams. Now, could the Giants have traded? Yes, they could have, but I don't think that any of these teams are going to trade with the Giants to go get Shador. No matter how much they offer, I don't think it's going to be enough because there's too much. All these teams need too much in the first round. The only teams I don't see needing that much would be maybe the Dolphins, the Buccaneers, which to me, I still think that the guy that they got will be gone by the time it's their turn in the second round, and the Broncos. I can see them trading back, but I just don't think that's the case. But I do believe that Shador, regardless of whether they get Aaron Rodgers or not, I mean, Shador is going to be the guy they go get. I know there's a lot of speculation about Jackson Dart going to the Steelers, but with Shador still being there, I think that's the guy that they're going to take. Call me crazy. I don't really care. Now, this one is controversial, and not really, actually. Colston Loveland is going to be a Charger, and here's why. Herbert needs his tight end. Hunter Henry's gone, and has been for the last few seasons. And, it's just not been the same without him. We need a guy who's a vertical threat and can also decently block. That's Colston Loveland. Where's he from? Michigan. Who's the head coach of the Chargers? It's Jim Harbaugh. So this only makes sense because he's, probably from Michigan. But I think they would have taken Tyler Warren too. Tight end is probably what they would have picked up anyways. A close second for me was Emeka Yugba and Luther Burden. But right now, I think we're on the Packers. Okay, so actually this works out perfectly. I think they're gonna go get how big is it? I think Yugba's gonna be the guy. It was gonna be between Burden, but Burden's a little bit smaller, and I don't think that's the kind of guy they're looking for. And I think they're gonna go get Emeka Egbuka. I'm sorry, that's my fault. That to me makes sense because the Packers need themselves a solid one, and if it can be anybody, it's going to be him because we know Ohio State's famous for producing receivers, popular ones at that. So that to me is the only pick that makes sense for them. Now, I am going to listen to this and take Eminwari for this pick. Harrison Smith is leaving, but not this season, but after, I'd say probably after this season, he's probably going to retire. That's my opinion. But what better safety to mold a young guy into, being a great than Harrison Smith? This dude has seen the game. He's seen it all. It doesn't matter. Harrison Smith is pretty good safety, and I do believe that this is the pick they take because, like I said, what better to mold into safety than Harrison Smith? With the Texans, it's really, I don't think a receiver would be their pick, so it's really kind of tough, and they're really needing an O-line, and it's probably stressing them out because C.J. Stroud had like a 39% pressure rate, which was one of the highest in the league. So Josh Simmons, after getting rid of Laramie Tunsil, is the only pick that really makes sense to me. Maybe Gray's able, but to me, like I said, just off of overall grade, I think he had a little bit of a higher grade. Oh, shoot. Well, I got called out on that one. I'm still going to go with Josh Simmons because it's Ohio State. They obviously play worse competition every year. Protection for C.J. Stroud would be the biggest thing. Can I not trade anymore? Oh, no. Oh, no, I can't. Okay. I was going to trade this pick because I was going to trade back down to Kansas City or Buffalo. So hypothetically, that's where I would have gone. But if I can't do that, or since I can't do that, I'm going to go with the... I'm going to go for the Rams. This is not... I don't want edge rusher. I want cornerback. And we're going to go with Shavon Revel to the Rams. That could be a lazy pick on my part, but I do believe that the secondary is something that they need. Now with the Ravens, this one makes a lot of sense to me, and I know most people would say Kenneth Grant because he's a high PFF grade, but I'm personally going with Walter Nolan to the Ravens. He just fits the scheme to me better, and it would make a lot of sense, because he's a big dude. Like I said, just like Mason Graham, he's unmovable and a force to be reckoned with. And to me, I think he has a personal edge over Kenneth Grant, but that's just me. I can't believe I've let him slide this far, but the Lions, I feel like it's an obvious pick. Take Michael Williams. They need an edge rusher bad, and Dan Campbell's gonna love. He's gonna have fun with this dude. So that's the only pick to me that makes sense. With the Commanders, they have a lot. They just got Debo, but I think they're gonna go secondary. That is where they lacked all year long. And either it's going to be Xavier Watson, which I think this guy's actually going to slide out of the first round. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're going to go Trey Amos. That would make to me a lot of sense. And because like I said, their secondary was what was the worst part of their defense, and I think they could have won the Super Bowl if it wasn't for their secondary. They got absolutely destroyed. Actually, I take it back. The Eagles were going all the way. There's nothing that the defense could have done to stop Saquon from running all over them. But for the Bills, only pick that makes sense to me is Donovan. I would try to pronounce his last name, but I'd slaughter it, so I'm not going to. Or Nick Scorton. I don't know how to say that, but these two guys would make sense to me. They need an edge rusher. Even though they just got Joey Bosa again, do we really think that he's going to stay that long? If not him, I'm going to say Thomas or Darian Porter. And I'm actually going to go with, like I said, it makes to me more sense if they go with a guy like, oh wait, I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to push edge with Donovan. Because like I said, they're trying to build up that line. Somebody to get that Greg Rousseau has opposite of, because they just paid him mega money. So I feel like this pick really makes sense just because of that. Getting rid of that tackle hurt the Chiefs. And it only makes sense if they replace him. That or Wharton. They could go get Kenneth Grant on the inside, which actually to me makes more sense. If you slide and get Kenneth Grant, I feel like that's a steal of the draft. All right. Now we're on to the Eagles. Where's all the Georgia players at? Where's the next best Georgia player? I don't really care how far he falls. I don't see another Georgia player. I'm kidding, by the way. It says their first needs a wide receiver, which I don't believe because, well, So with that being said, they lost Darius Slay, and this could be a hot take and a half, but Maxwell Harrison just seems like the guy to me that goes to this Eagles. But here you go. Here's the whole thing. Take a look at this for a second. Let me know what you think, guys. Obviously, I probably work on some of these. I would love to hear your opinions. I personally think that, most of these work out. I know some of them are reach. And I was kind of looking for that. I don't know how accurate it's going to be. Obviously, I'm going to download this and see how accurate it is on draft day. I would love to see, I'd love to hear you guys, your team. If I covered your team, which I know I did, all of the teams, let me know what you would have picked for them. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions. It only makes me a better YouTuber. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and end this video. Enjoy. Have a lovely day. Peace out.